The information provided in this podcast is for general knowledge and informational purposes only. It does not constitute medical advice. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional for diagnosis and treatment of any medical condition. The views and opinions expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Unplugged Healthcast or Dr. Wall.
We're so afraid because we've been indoctrinated, as you've already touched very clearly on, that the pharmaceutical companies decided, I'm not sure how or why, but they decided that the sun was the monster as they've opened the door to a mega billion-dollar industry of so-called sun care, sun lotion products. Fact is, ultraviolet light is absolutely essential to life. It's essential to wellness. I assume that whoever, and I say it sarcastically, whoever invented the sun did not make a mistake.
Neck pain, backaches, headaches, fatigue, the list goes on, and you're likely on it. Tired of the broken system and big pharma? We offer logical solutions, teach you to think critically, and empower you to reclaim your health. Welcome to the Unplugged Healthcast with Dr. Kevin Wall.
Hey, welcome back to the Unplugged Healthcast. Dr. Kevin Wall here, your host. We've had a lot of conversations about some of the logical approaches to health and being healthy for a lifetime, and today we're going to continue that. We often say that health is simpler than you think it is, and food, water, and sunlight makes healthy plants, and it surely does not hurt humans. And today we're going to talk about light. There's a lot of conversations out there, a lot of confusion, some hot topics on things like infrared light, full spectrum light, red light therapy, the concepts of UV light and blue light, some of the detrimental issues relative to that. We have an expert that's going to come in and talk about some of the benefits, and we're going to probably contradict some thoughts that you have. One being is this fear we have of UV light and that, man, you're going to get skin cancer. In fact, I'm just going to throw it out right now. It's not the UV light causing your skin cancer. It's your sunscreen. This story starts back in 1976, as a lot of my stories do. I like the retro old time, but 1976 was a big year in the United States of America. It was our bicentennial, 200 years old. America was, and it was a celebratory year. A lot of events went on, especially around the 4th of July. And if you lived in the Midwest like I did, when 4th of July came, you actually have been living in the winter where sun wasn't that prevalent. And so you wanted to be out in the sun. In fact, if you went to the beaches, whether it was Midwest or the West Coast, there were bronze beauties bathing on the sand, and they were lathered up with copper tone coconut tanning oil. See, we didn't have this crazy fear of the sun and getting skin cancer because really skin cancer was hardly even a conversation back then. In fact, the incidence of malignant melanoma back in 1970s was 3 in every 100,000 people. And the incidence of anyone dying from it was tiny, minuscule. There really wasn't even that much of a conversation, to the point that we actually were lathering ourselves up with cooking oil sometimes, trying to get the best tan possible. Well, all the fun must come to an end, and in 1978, FDA decided they had to get their hands into the picture. The fear started that, oh man, skin cancer, UV light is bad for you. And then in 1978, FDA came out with SPF. And if you don't know what that is, that's the rating system to determine how strong your sunscreen is and how much protection you're going to get from UV light. Well, it would make sense if UV light really was detrimental, but the problem is the higher the SPF number went, the more sunscreen they sold. The fear drove the sales of sunscreen, and so every company out there making it decided that if we could get the SPF number higher and higher and higher, then we could sell more sunscreen. The unfortunate truth, though, is to get the SPF number high enough for it to really block the UV lights that you were afraid of, you had to add a lot of crazy chemicals. Most of those creams had benzene derivatives that were the mainstay of most of the compounds. If you've listened to my podcast, I love pickleball, and I was hanging out, and a friend of mine we were playing with, he of course reaches into his bag and pulls out his sunscreen, and he starts lathering himself up. And then he does to me what has been asked of me many times as he looks over and says, "Hey, Doc, would you like some sunscreen?" And I said, much to his dismay, I said, "No, thanks. I prefer not to have skin cancer." He then looked at me like you can imagine with open eyes like I was an alien. He goes, "Well, my daughter's a primary care doctor, and she tells me I need to be putting this on all the time." I go, "Well, your daughter, I'm sure, has good intentions, and she's probably a very intelligent person, but she's unfortunately in the herd of cattle following every other cow over the cliff." After having 35, 40 years of high SPF sunscreen, we have a malignant melanoma rate of 17 out of every 100,000. We have a 500% increase in malignant melanoma deaths, and we have a severe increase in skin cancer in young adults and children. Skin cancer used to be an issue of the elderly, but now we've created an issue where it's in our children and our young adults. And here's the fact: it is not your UV problem. It is the fact that you are putting known carcinogens in high amounts every day on yourself, on your children, on anybody and everybody all the time, because we are so deathly afraid of UV lights. Well, I'm here to tell you there is a good ending to the story, providing you consider stopping the madness. We got to get off this chronic illness train. We got to stop chasing these rabbits down the wrong holes. So to help us understand this, to put a little bit more truth to the matter, I brought in a gentleman who I've known for a few years. His name is Ken Ceder. He is the founder and director of SOLshine. He has worked with a gentleman named John Ott, which I know has done a lot of research on some of the effects of not only UV light, but full light spectrum. Ken Ceder, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Doc. My pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Well, Ken, if you would speak into a little bit of what took you down the road to start studying the benefits and or detriments of light or UV light, and give us your thoughts on anything that I kind of started the podcast out on.
Well, intuitively, without knowing it, as a youngster, I lived on a peninsula, Doc, and I lived on the beach. So I kind of loved the beach from early on, spent my youth there, never really gave it much thought as to the sun being good or bad, other than always felt good. And I was there, like I say, like a fish in the water and just sunbathing. All said, fast forward, about, I guess trying to go back, it must be about 35, almost 40 years ago. I was working for in those days, the chairman of a famous toy company. And make a long story short, I had pleased him with my task so much. He said, "Ken," he said, "I don't want you to work for me." He said, "I'll tell you what, I'd like you to go into business with me, and I'll back you if you can find an offer that's on my desk that you like. I have lots of proposals. I'll be happy to back you, and we'll be partners." I said, "That's a great idea." I was a new dad at the time, a new family. Anyways, I was a lazy reader as well, and although there was a load of documents on his desk, there was a video, or whatever we called in those days, VHS. I popped it into the machine, and lo and behold, I saw what was then the work, or some of the work, of the late Dr. John Ott, who was a time-lapse photography innovator in his day, basically the speeding up of sequences, the opposite of slow motion. But he was also quite world famous in the sense of the work that he did for Walt Disney. He did a lot of the sequences that we may have all seen of any of Disney's works, of flowers unfolding and things of that nature, really quite miraculous. I don't know what it was, but in seeing his work, within a matter of minutes, I was just smitten. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, these flowers unfolding and his discussion about the types of light that were making this all happen. Needless to say, I went to my then employer and said, who in the heck is that? I want to know if this guy's got something great. And he said, that's John Ott. He said, I'm supporting some of his research on color television to demonstrate that it's very hazardous to health, that televisions are putting out very serious radiation. And make a long story short, I said, boy, I'd love to meet this guy. He made arrangements, needless to say, for me to meet John Ott way back in, I think it was 87, Doc. All said, the end result of that meeting was getting a license agreement to manufacture and market and sell what was then known as the Ott light. So that was pretty much historically how I came into the light, pardon the pun, but basically in seeing the work of John Ott just blew my mind. And to this day, 35, almost 40 years later, the passion for light, primarily sunshine, has never left me. As a matter of fact, next birthday I'll be 80. I think the passion continues to grow.
That's awesome. I love it. You have said something to me as we've had conversation, and it talked to me about what you mean by mal-illumination is to light as malnutrition is to food. Most people are afraid of the sun. They're missing it. We talk about you need to get out in the sun, but people are so fearful of UV light. I got a feeling there's something in that statement that people need to understand.
Thanks, Doc. I appreciate that as well. That's a phrase that was coined by, again, my mentor of sorts, the late Dr. John Ott. And just to repeat that, mal-illumination is to light as malnutrition is to food. John coined that phrase because he was one of the few people that identified the fact that sunlight, or light in general, is technically a nutrient, what we call a photonutrient. If you can envision the different colors of sunshine, the rainbow of colors, each different wavelength is almost like vitamins. And the full spectrum of sunshine, being out in natural sunlight, is like it's the equivalent of having a multivitamin, where you've already touched briefly in your earlier comments about different colors of light, from blue light and red light. Basically, specific wavelengths might be perceived as individual vitamins, where again, the full-on sunshine would be very simply a multivitamin. To go into the phrase, the fact that light being a nutrient, what John Ott identified was that the fact that most of us are starving for light and we don't even realize it. When I was a kid, as I say, next birthday I'll be 80, you couldn't get us to come in from playing outdoors. These days it seems you can't get kids to go outdoors to play. So the point I'm trying to make is that for some crazy reason, we have progressively stepped indoors. I think maybe the computer age is somewhat, part of the problem, where we're now on these computers instead of being outdoors, being the hunters and farmers and gatherers that we were, in the last century or two. But that said, what folks are not recognizing is that sunlight is absolutely the most essential, overlooked nutrient. And it's more than just a nutrient unto itself. What is probably shocking in the same idea of the need for light for a nutrient, all that you ingest, Doc, whether it be foods, vitamins, for that matter, even I would imagine most every med, whatever you ingest, technically speaking, has what we call a specific wavelength absorption. In simple words, what that means is that you need light entering your brain through the retina of your eye to metabolize what you've just ingested. And if you do not metabolize it properly, obviously you will not absorb it properly. And I hate to tell those folks that take these expensive vitamins, if you're not getting the full spectrum of sunshine, preferably, into your brain through the retina of your eye, most of the goodness of those vitamins may very well be going down the toilet bowl. Forgive my language, but it's a waste. So thus, the importance of mal-illumination to light and malnutrition if you're not getting what we generically call the full spectrum of light, in simple language, sunshine, especially in the morning, by the way. You're simply starving for what is essential, I presume from the beginning of time, essential.
After an injury, it can feel like life's on hold, but at AFC, we're here to help you get back to what matters. With personalized injury plans and our expert staff, we don't just treat the pain, we guide you back to strength and confidence. Because getting back isn't just about healing, it's about thriving. Call us or visit our website to start your journey today.
Wow, that was great, and that opens up so many potential conversations. I just want to hit one, which was people don't realize that they could get a lot more out of their food and their nutrition, save money by going out and just being in the sun. What are the negative effects of maybe the sunglasses? Even I often wear sunglasses. In Arizona, the sun's so bright. Is there a normal amount of time we should not have sunglasses to maybe help our eyes be better and our nutrition be absorbed?
First of all, ideally, putting aside, many of us have busy schedules. When possible, nothing could be more beneficial that costs absolutely nothing to step outdoors when it's sunny, even on a gray day, to get yourself about 15 or 20 minutes of morning sunlight when possible would be the most important part of the day to get that light, because it's setting your circadian rhythm. The first light in the morning syncs you with nature. And even though the color of light actually changes, throughout the day, what they call the Kelvin temperature, the morning light is what really sets the cornerstone. And thus, morning light would be the most essential to get your photonutrition, to set your circadian rhythm. And in case folks don't know it, almost every cell in your body, Doc, has a time clock, and getting that morning light syncs it with nature. So it's critical. That would be the ideal time, is to get that morning light.
So let's help people with this fear that has been just prevalent, that UV light is dangerous. We have to stop it at all cost. Maybe jump in so they could understand, I'm not just making this stuff up. UV light, is this bad for you? Why are we so afraid of this?
Well, we're so afraid because we've been indoctrinated, as you've already touched very clearly on, that the pharmaceutical companies decided, I'm not sure how or why, but they decided that the sun was the monster, as they've opened the door to a mega billion-dollar industry of so-called sun care, sun lotion products. The fact is, number one, ultraviolet light is absolutely essential. I assume that whoever, and I say it sarcastically, whoever invented the sun did not make a mistake. To go back to the fact, a little side note that may be of interest, there was some interesting research, Doc, that I think you'll really appreciate when it comes to UV in particular. There were several that were done, but one in particular of the same research was done none other than the United States Navy. And they were at the time researching sailors on board ship with the reflection of sunlight on the ocean and skin cancer versus sailors working indoors as administrators on computers, I believe computers, but working indoors. Let me delete the word computer for just a moment. Working indoors, but what they were working under was a whole other subject, fluorescent lighting. I'm sure I can lead the witness and ask you to guess who had the greater incidence of skin cancer. Let me cut to the chase. It was the indoor sailors working under, you guessed it, fluorescent lighting, which if you choose to, we can touch upon that in cancer. But the fact is, sailors on board the ship had a lower incidence of skin cancer than indoor office workers. What does that even suggest? The other thing is, if you think about it, I hope most of your audience at least clued into the importance, of course, vitamin D. Most of us have finally got the message that vitamin D is kind of essential. Well, my goodness, is there anybody that doesn't recognize that ultraviolet light is what manufactures vitamin D in the skin? So I can't really get into the details of not being the genius of the research, but I think common sense, unfortunately, has been put aside because of the marketing and the advertising of the pharmaceutical companies to paint this picture that the sun, and in particular ultraviolet, and the need for their products, otherwise skin cancer, is evident, which is a complete, well, do I dare say lie? I don't know how else to say it. It's simply not the truth. So UV, absolutely, unequivocally essential. And just expand on that with your idea of the sun, not your idea, your comment about sunglasses. I used to wear sunglasses. When I met Dr. Ott, after hearing him and learning from him, I stopped wearing sunglasses. However, on occasions, of course, especially in sunny Arizona, especially if you're driving, you don't want to take the risk of being blinded by the sun. So sunglasses, some kind, is just kind of essential. for your audience, I hope they'll know that if you ever do wear sunglasses, whether they're regular or on occasion, according to Dr. Art, the only color lens that is advisable is what they call natural or neutral gray. And the reason for that is, according to Dr. Art, the gray lens filters the sunshine that's hitting the lens and reduces all of the colors, do I dare say naturally or properly, so you're still getting the full spectrum of sunlight, but it's now being filtered through that gray lens. On the flip side, if you're using some kind of a colored lens that are quite popular in sunglasses, the downside is as the sunshine hits that colored lens, it's converting the full spectrum to what we call monochromatic. And it's sending only one color basically into your brain. So the idea of sunglasses is not preferred when given a choice. However, if you need them for the obvious reasons of driving or whatever that reason may be, natural or neutral gray would be the ideal way to go for sunglasses without question.
There's an epidemic, it seems like, and I see it all the time doing blood work on lots of patients. You would think, vitamin D, exposure to sun, those are supposed to go hand in hand, right? But in Arizona, we actually have the highest level of vitamin D deficiency than probably any other state I've ever heard about. Is this relative to our fear of UV light and everyone just avoiding it? They think they're getting out in the sun. That should be producing vitamin D from the sun exposure. But is the sunscreen stopping that? Do you think there's a relationship? I'm curious.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that the sunscreen is a major contributor to the problem. A lot of people, even here in sunny Arizona, we look outside and we see the beautiful sun shining, but many of us spend, I think the number is about 93% of our time indoors. So we may be in sunny Arizona, but ironically, the fact is we're not out in that sunny Arizona sun. So it takes us back to that key word that I touched on already of mal-illumination. We're starving for light, not just the UV, but especially the UV, but we're starving for all of that spectrum because most of us are indoors. And if we're not indoors, we're often behind the windshield of our cars that are filtering out a lot of that light. Or we are, in fact, as already mentioned, wearing sunglasses or covered up to such a degree, we may think that we're getting plenty, but we're starving for the light and thus the UV related to the vitamin D, which is, it's crazy, but it's true. Of all places, sunny Arizona. I did not know that statistic, but unfortunately, it doesn't surprise me.
Pain holding you back? AFC Physical Medicine and Chiropractic Centers of Phoenix have real solutions to get your life back. With 9 valley-wide locations, we offer integrated care including chiropractic, medical, and nutritional support. Our approach goes beyond prescriptions, combining therapies to help you thrive. Don't let pain define your story. Take the first step towards living life to its fullest. Call us now at 480-210-6103 or visit afcchiropractic.com to schedule your appointment.
Let's jump to a couple other topics here. Infrared saunas, red light therapy. What are your thoughts on those devices? Are they worthy of people's time, or should they just bypass them and just go hang outside?
I think that they're beyond worthy. As a matter of fact, just to try to break down some of those colors or subjects for just a moment, the term photobiomodulation, the modulation of our cells, photobiomodulation is kind of a new word in the medical dictionary of sorts. It's come about. There are, Doc, I believe, last time I read or heard, several thousand, I think over 5,000 peer-reviewed papers associated with photobiomodulation, red light therapy, and/or near-infrared light. The benefits, presumably, are so clear and far-reaching, from hair growth, relieving pain, collagen, reducing wrinkles, speedier recovery from exercise. So the idea of red light therapy, I don't know enough of the details of different manufacturers. There's plenty of them out there, but the generic concept of red light, good medicine, for lack of better, non-invasive, no negative side effects that I've ever read or heard about with regard to flipping the coin from so-called red light therapy. And when they say red light therapy, just to to clarify, it usually means visible red light, a specific wavelength, often 630 nanometer, sometimes 670 nanometer. Whatever the case may be, a touch of it is in the visible red, but in conjunction with invisible near-infrared light. And infrared, most of us associate with the heat of the sun, but the near-infrared is non-thermal, so there's no real heat. But it's a combination of near-infrared and red light is generically known as either red light therapy or more factually as photobiomodulation. Good stuff without question. Putting aside whose product, I couldn't tell you who you should go to, but we'd also encourage, which we touched on before, what I jokingly call safe sun. You do not get off the plane from the northeast of New York City and step into a beach in Miami in the dead of winter and lay on the beach for a couple of hours. You want to progressively allow your skin to adjust to that. So I really would encourage sunshine, but again, a little common sense, progressively building up so that you start to see the darkness of the skin being able to tolerate, that effect of being out in the sun as much as you choose.
Yeah, I have a lot of people ask me this question because they think infrared saunas are all the same. And everyone loves the heat, so they want the one that makes them sweat. I get it. There's full spectrum infrared saunas. They cost a little bit more. They're worth tons more than you're paying because you're going to get the benefit of the near, the mid, and the far infrared rays. And I'm telling you, if you're going to spend a half an hour, 40 minutes in infrared sauna sweating, you might as well get the most out of it. So really look for the full spectrum. I also want to jump on a topic that's pretty hot out there called methylene blue, photobiomodulation. This is happening in your body to some degree, but you can facilitate it drastically by infrared saunas. It stimulates your mitochondria. Methylene blue, the research out there, the biohacking going on that's telling us something that's been out there for 40 years increases that process by about fourfold. I'm already seeing a significant difference in my body's metabolism, repair. After playing 3 hours of pickleball, I recover much faster. Every morning I do methylene blue and 20 minutes in the infrared sauna. UV light is not something to be afraid of. You've got to find ways to get yourself the benefit. Let's finish our podcast here, Ken, with just a few thoughts, because some people are still going to be fearful of skin cancer. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be logical. They shouldn't be afraid of sun, but they should approach it logically. What did you call that?
Sure, I call that safe sun, Doc. And simply I associate that with just common sense. There's no doubt, as we've already mentioned, sunlight, it's essential, absolutely essential. Just to make a comment, to touch on the word metabolism, light entering the eye, the retina of the eye, light regulates, and light is 100% responsible for metabolism. To digress just for a moment, when I was a youngster, I worked in Dad's automotive shop. And I was always curious about, combustion engine, being a guy in cars. But it was funny, somewhere after meeting John Ott, he made a comment about humans being combustion engines. And the analogy was that an automobile, basically, combustion engine has fuel. Well, we as humans, combustion engine, of course, have food. In an automobile, you have either a carburetor or you have fuel injection. We, in humans, we have our lungs to add to that combustion. In the automobile, we have a spark plug to give it spark for ignition. What few people realize is a human combustion engine, the spark for human is the light that enters your eye. That is the spark of human combustion. And metabolism, your fire is 100% dependent on the light that basically enters the eye. 98%, Doc, of the light that enters the body comes in through the smallest organ, your eyeball. Only 2% comes in through your largest organ, your skin. If we know the value of vitamin D associated with that 2% that's hitting the skin, what might that suggest of the 98% of the sunlight energy that's entering the body, primarily the brain, through the retina of the eye? So again, I hope the audience gets the message short and sweet. Safe sun, absolutely, but don't let that sun get away. Morning sun especially, set your rhythm. It will cause a chain reaction throughout the day, starting with better sleep, weight loss. It's an endless list, painless, costs nothing but step out into the sunshine.
All right. Well, as we've said so many times before, that health is more simple than you think it is. Food, water, and sunlight. And Ken, you drove that sunlight portion home. That was awesome. I'm going to finish with the top, I think, 8 ways to help your body from a natural remedy standpoint so you're not so fearful of the skin cancer. First one is stop putting on crazy sunscreen. SPF, you got to stop the madness. That stuff is killing you and causing, in my opinion, it's causing the cancer. It's not saving you from it. But if you want to add a few things to help, you can add turmeric, reduces inflammation, natural way to help your body not get into a cancer cell epidemic. Green tea, the antioxidant-rich beverage, helps inhibit the growth of skin cancer cells. Vitamin C, a powerful antioxidant. Regular consuming vitamin C will help prevent the spread of skin cancer or melanoma cells while helping maintain just general overall health. Aloe vera, typically to skin cancer lesions, can aid in wound healing. There is an over biopsy thing going on in the dermatology office, and I'm telling you, you got to stop letting them hack all over you. Frankincense is a good oil as well for helping reduce the effects or potential for skin cancer. Vitamin E, topical application of vitamin E oil may nourish the skin and aid in healing. Ginger, an anti-inflammatory antioxidant, it holds potential as an anti-cancer agent as well. And the last one, eggplant extract applied on your skin has found to be very helpful in either preventing skin cancer or treating any small stages of it. So there we go. There's lots of answers out there, and one of them isn't the sunscreen. So we're wrapping this thing up today. Thanks for listening. I hope you got something out of it. I know I did. Ken brought some powerful information about the benefits of sun and hopefully stopped you from being so fearful of getting out into it. So, hey, if you want to be involved in our show at any point, if you have questions, if you would do me a favor and go and subscribe or follow us on all the places. We're on Spotify, we're on YouTube, we're on Apple. Unplugged Healthcast is our another way you can find us. But if you would mind sharing this, because we're saving lives one person at a time. But thanks for tuning in today. And this is Dr. Wall and
Ken Ceder.
Ken Ceder. And we are signing off today. Be blessed, be healthy, never give up, never give in. Join us again on the next Unplugged Healthcast.